Hi Bryce, how you doing? Okay, you are definitely well on your way here to a successful project. I've got a few comments, so give me a few minutes here. I think what I have to say is really going to make some good sense to you. So I think there's a few things that we need to really talk about. Now, first, I'm going to talk about the group, and then I'll talk about the individual postage stamps and illustrations and associated color choices and typography. So let's go ahead and take a look at the group, the series, as it were. So this, as we know, is a series for postage stamps, right? So the word series should give you some clues as to how consistent each should be. So if they're a series and they're going to be looked at the same time together, right? If these were just individual stamps, a lot of these comments would be irrelevant. However, since this is a series, there's some consistencies that have to take place in order to maintain that series kind of status. You know what I'm saying? So a series is assuming that they're all part of the same thing, right? So the one thing I'm looking at here is the focal plane. So in other words, how far is the character from the focal point or the focal plane? So if you were the guy holding the camera, how far would each one of these? And you can see there's some inconsistencies there. And that's all based on cropping, really. So the size of the head itself in association to the picture plane will determine the distance from the focal plane, right? So each of these should be the heads themselves, since this is a portrait, the head area itself should take up relatively the same area in each stamp. Otherwise, it would presume that one is closer to the focal plane than the other. Okay, so that's, I think, once you get that together, that would entail. Okay, so let's say you use this as your baseline. It would entail kind of cropping these a little bit closer, especially this one, since this one's clearly much further in distance than this. Okay, so think about that. And I think that no, the other thing that you're going to find when you start to really look at these as not one or not four individual illustrations, but part of a series, you're going to see some inconsistencies in the skin tone. And that's where you, as an illustrator, have to take some liberties. So, I'm sure the skin tones are different in the images, but again, this is illustration. You are illustrating a consistent presentation of elements within a series, so there's some liberties you'll have to take here, and I think that is specifically relevant in the skin tones themselves, where this kind of has a gray cast to it, where this definitely has a yellow orange cast to it. This one's got kind of a darker, kind of a blue, dark blue green cast to it, and this definitely has a green cast to it. So we want to get those pretty relevant, well, pretty darn close to the same skin tone. So you'll want to work on that. Okay, so let's jump in. And one thing I want to talk about before we talk about the individual illustrations is the series itself. So typography, right? Now I'm zoomed out here, and I'm not even really that far. But if you really zoom out here, you can see that the typography gets lost. And now typography has got to be a really integral part of the compositions. So I think typography definitely needs to be worked on. I think the placement is okay, although I would not center that. If that's centered, I would definitely pull that over to one corner, increase the type size, and then this is fine in the other corner, but again, increase the type size. The main thing is that those need to be legible and readable. Okay, so off to the individual illustrations. I think these are overdone. I think all of the facial areas are overdone in their depiction of the tonal variations, as seen in the shadows and the highlights. So this, again, a lot of this has to do with taking liberties as an illustrator. So you don't need to show all of these little tonal variations right here. Really, simplifying this thing is the name of the game, for sure. So you definitely, right now, because if you don't simplify this flat avatar illustrative style, you end up with what looks like face paint, or kind of get this kind of zombie look with this almost looks like face paint here, 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 and especially right through here in the eyes, and then here, right through here, here. So you really want to try to get some regularity in those tones. Okay, other than that, I think, okay, this particular one, for example, I think this it would be really, really a neat idea to add some texture here by trying to get some stripes in those dots on the ties, and that will really add some dimension. I think that the way that this curls is not really depicted as well as in the illustration as it is in the image. This definitely curls up, where this just kind of looks like it's going straight out. I think the main thing in this illustration is the fact that this hair is pure gray. Wow, this hair has really got a lot of brown in it. And then I think also the eyes, the depiction of the blue in those eyes could be enhanced a little bit. I think this one is really underdeveloped. There's a lot of characteristics here that are really can be exploited. And I think the braids in the hair, some of the ornamentation and beads in the hair and in the beard, the braids in the beard, really, really important to include that. That was a big part of this character's personality, right? And the stuff hanging, try to get that in there, that stuff. Remember, he had all that stuff hanging from the bandana. And then I think the eyes could definitely be enhanced a little bit. Right now, they just look like they're very, very black, and there's not a whole lot of detail in those areas. Since that's going to be the most important part of the illustration, I recommend working with that a little bit. This one's great. I think the only thing here that really is getting me is this kind of really dark, almost, as I said before, it almost looks like face paint. That, and I think some of the highlights in the hair could be a little bit more pronounced. So in other words, that's really light. Those are really light highlights right there. So let's depict that here. It'll add some wonderful dimension to the illustration itself. And then finally, this one, I just think there's just too many areas of different colors. Let's try to get just kind of just neutral tonality and just very, very slight depictions of the shadow and highlight areas. Okay, other than that, I think you're doing great. Like I said, this is just right on the cusp of becoming a very successful project. So really looking forward to seeing this get finalized. If you have any questions, if you want to run anything by me this week, I'm game. I'm here. So, you know what? I just remembered something I wanted to mention. Don't stroke your typeface. Don't stroke that type. It never works. Stroking type is something that pretty much is kind of frowned upon in typography because it changes the shapes of the letter forms themselves, and it makes things really hard to read. And I think we can see that right here. So definitely don't want to stroke those letter forms. Okay, as I was saying, if you have anything you want to run by me, please feel free. I'll be glad to address anything that happens to come up this week before final submission this coming weekend. All right, Bryce, thank you very much.